Hi, everybody. Of course, as I'd mentioned in our last video, we're going to take a look at Chapter 12 today. And let me grab the textbook. Of course, as you can tell, I'm still recording these at home. And I'll be uploading a file that you'll be able to use as your upload for 10, 11, and 12. And I'll note that over in Moodle. And again, Chapter 11, we did column functions, using summarizing data, using aggregate functions, and doing some groupings. And as you can tell, that's my dog, Poppy, who is enjoying herself protecting my home. I thought you'd enjoy hearing that. Just an insight into my house. I'm at home. I'm working while all of you are out partying, going to raves, or whatever activities in which you engage. I know you are. So we're going to talk about Chapter 12, and this is controlling the level of summarization. And let me pop over to the very start of Chapter 12. And this is over on page 35, where they talk about using and summarizing the data in a column in a table. And in this chapter, we're going to divide the rows of tables into groups. In other words, we're going to do some grouping. And that's the primary focus of this chapter. Now, I'll probably divide this into a part 1 and a part 2 type of thing. And let me go ahead, and I'm going to share my screen, and I will get SQL Fun up. So I'll share the screen. Share the screen. And let me see if I can find SQL. There. A little warning about the color thing. There it is. SQL Fun. Isn't that fun? Okay. Open that up. And I'll make sure I'll make sure to do the little annotate thing. You see me up there. Maybe you see me moving around or not. I'm not sure. Anyway, I'm going to enable the content, and I'll go over to the Patrick materials and grab the Chapter 12 code. Isn't it exciting, some of these up close and personal perspectives you're getting on me, your instructor? Isn't it exciting? I have to say it is for me. Maybe not for you, but it is for me. Well, anyway, and that's the washer going off. See how this is so professional. Like I said, you're guinea pigs, and we're having big fun. If you'll take a look for a moment, you should have your textbook be People of the Book. Patrick textbook, this one. You can see. Over on page 437, you'll want to take a look there, and basically they show us dividing a table into groups of rows, and so we do this grouping phenomena, and you'll notice they have a beginning table where they have this rows formed into groups, and you see the 3 groups, group A, B, and C, and then the result table gives us those groupings of group A, group B, and group C. And again, this is this process where we're doing some sorting. Now, we're going to look at this 12.2, and so you ought to have the text file opened up as well. And let me go ahead and do the annotation bit. Click annotate. Let me find that spotlight my mouse. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? And I'll move this up here. Well, I want to spotlight my mouse. Okay. And here's 12.2. Now, here's where the grouping comes in. We're going to select the manager ID. That makes sense. We're going to get a count, use the count function, and we're going to use a column alias as number of employees. We're going to use a minimum function, maximum function. That's going to be from the employees table. Okay. So far, nothing different. We're using these aggregate functions that we learned in Chapter 11, and then we're going to use the where not, and we're going to basically filter out anybody whose employee ID is not, the employee ID is not 202. Okay, so we're going to exclude that person. In fact, at the bottom, page 438 in the textbook, in the task, which is what this query is based upon, they say omit employee 202. Then here's where we're going to do the grouping. We're going to group by manager ID, and then we're going to order it by manager ID. And you'll see over in the book, look, to get the most of these, whether you're in the classroom or you're here watching my video, or you're watching me grab my dog. Come here, dog. Come here, puppy. Yeah, that's right. Her name is Poppy. Let me show you, everybody. Hi. Let's say hi to Poppy. Hello, Poppy. Poppy is also, she graduated from OBU with honors. Poppy has no earthly idea why her dad has put her in the middle of BISS 4403 Chapter 12 coverage. But she's a good dog. She's a rescue dog. She's about 8 or 9 years old. Sweet, isn't she? Yeah. Good dog. Okay. I'm going to put you in the chair. Isn't that wonderful getting all these insights into me? I'm actually a human being. I'm not a wind-up toy that they put in the office and then open me up when the semester starts. Okay. Now, in page 439, you're going to see the beginning table and then the finish or the ending table where the clause is applied and the row for employee ID is removed. So we've done grouping, but kind of grouping in reverse. So we're going to copy this, and then we'll put it into the SQL Fun database. I love that animation. Isn't that cool? Pop that in, and we'll run the query. And here we are. Here's the manager ID, and here are the other data pieces of bits of data that we wanted. And this highlighter is a little bit wretched to deal with at times. Well, wretched's not the right word. Clumsy, that'd be a better word. I'm gonna have to learn to increase my word power, just like you. Maximum credit, minimum credit. Here we go. Here's the manager ID. So we've grouped them. Okay. And again, we grouped them by the, we grouped them basically by manager ID, and we ordered them by manager ID, and we excluded employee 202. So we took that table and we pulled groups out of it. So we have the group of those whose manager ID is 201, and those whose manager ID is 202, and those whose manager ID is 203. Now, 202 is a manager, so we omitted that. So we omitted 202 because 202 is a manager. We just wanted employees here. And then we see the number of employees to each of them. Now, we see a null here, and that's an interesting case. That's a problem. And who have a maximum credit of $30, and that's a bit of a glitch there. And I don't know why we got that null. I'd have to take a look at that to try to figure out. But something was going on with the employees table, probably that we've not worked with. Well, my friends, that's 12.2. And we'll save that. They don't instruct us here in the text to save it in any particular way. Well, actually, you know, if you look over at page 440, what can I say? I'm a genius. I'm not really. I'm a moron. That I am. Honorary. An actual moron for a long time. Page 440, you can see the result table. And the rows of the table divided into groups. And there we are. So we're going to call this, and they give us a full explanation on 440 and 441 how that ordering process worked, the summarizations. This is 12-2, and we'd be good. Click OK. I just love that little thing there. I hope you're seeing that. I hope you should be seeing. I hope you're seeing me in the corner. You're seeing the application. I'll take a look at the video later myself to find out. But you should also be seeing this highlighted, little annotated cursor. Well, in 12.3, we're going to do it. This is page 442, and this is where we're going to work on 2 or more columns. So we were working on 1 column that time. Now we're going to work on 2 or more columns. So we'll pop open, we'll come over here to 12.3. And we'll close that on down. We'll click create. Or to move this a little bit. And wow, I didn't know that. I could do that in different colors. Let's see. Let's see if I can get a bison green. No, what? That's no good. That's for line widths anyway. Do a query design. And we'll close this off. We'll go to SQL view. Okay. Now, it's probably going to be easier for you to see and understand if I go ahead and show you here. Here we're going to select the manager. In fact, I got a little bit of an error there. Need to put the S in for select. There we go. We'll run this, and there's the results set. Manager ID, department code, the number of employees, number of minimum credit and maximum credit. And there we are. Now, in this case, as the author's note, we're working with, we're adding the department code. We still have omitted employee 202, and you can see that beginning table and results set over on page 12.3. Again, here you see we select the manager ID, the department code, we get account, number of employees, minimum credit, maximum credit, and then we exclude employee 2 right here, and then we do manager ID and manager ID, and then we group them by manager ID, and we order them by manager ID. This time we got also the department code, the number of employees. So we added in, the department code, and you can see that here. And they don't ask us to save that as anything. You'll see an extensive set of notes that explains all this. Now, this is more, these queries right here are exceptionally close to what you're going to be doing out at work. You'll probably be running queries, okay? You'll be doing some grouping and so forth. You're going to be doing that. It's just going to be a lot. You're not going to be writing or you're not going to be writing any code, chances are, and you probably will not be. You'll probably be working with graphic user interface, a lot like the design view and access, which is kind of the mother of all of them, or father of all of them, however you want to put that. And for all intents and purposes, you'll be mixing and matching and that type of thing. Okay. Now, they introduced the issue of nulls, and this is over on page 444. And there at the top of page 45, they give us a task. The authors give us some real discussion about null groups when there are 2 more grouping columns. And what happens when we have columns that contain nulls. Nulls, bad news, bad news, bad news. Every table should be designed so that a null value cannot be entered. It just shouldn't happen. It does, and the authors recognize this, that people just don't input data like they should or whatever. But the truth is, if a table is essentially a representation of some record that you collected, or unless it's a dimension table, as we've talked about in data warehousing, or it's a table of constants. Other than that, it's a fact table, and it ought to be compiled with a full set of records. If it's not, you shouldn't save it and keep it. It's no good. I realize that right now that was a fantastic drink. I'm not saying this is a product endorsement, but this is a drink from Sonic. a Shawnee formed a company that started in Shawnee. I love putting that finger in that. It's going, yeah. Make America great again. Cool, huh? Well, nonetheless, they give us the code there in the middle of page 445. And we're going to select column 2, column 3, and then we're going to count everything. And we add aliases to get the result set that we have over in page 446. Okay? And 445 gives us the beginning table. So let's pop in here. This is 12.4. Now, notice that we're going to get column 2, column 3. That's the name of those columns. We're going to count everything. We're going to then we're going to count column 4, and we're going to count column 5, and all that's from the section 1204 table. We're going to group it by column 2, by column 3. Then we're going to order it by column 2, not column 3. Now, if you look at page 445, okay, you'll see that it has a significant number of null values. Basically, column 5 is completely has no values in it. They're all null. So we're going to have to deal with that. Now, this is something where when you get a report at work, for example, and it's full of missing data, this is a chance, especially if you're in a larger company, this will be a time for you to go up and talk to the IT people, talk to the database administrator and say, I want to understand why I have so many missing values and why so many what appear to be null values. And this will be a chance for that person to speak with you about the table, how it was created, all that. We give you this course so you can do some database work, because you're going to be working with convergence tools, as I've talked about, tools like a pivot table, for example, that take the best of a database, relational database, that lets us look at stuff on a multidimensional basis, group it and sort it, etc. The analytical cube we've talked about, and the best of a spreadsheet where we can do computational work. We're going to copy this in, and we'll go over here and let's move these things out of the way. Probably need to find out, I probably need to figure out how one anchors these to the top or something, or puts them on the side. That's a thing for me to figure out. You're the unfortunate guinea pigs here. And for that, I thank you. But hey, it's a free points on all these. So like, you have no complaint. Now, let me pop these up here. I'm going to resume the share. This has nothing to do with Sunny and share. But notice what we have here. Now we have some expressions here. Now, the authors, as I mentioned, added column aliases here so you didn't have these expressions. But notice all the null values that we have, especially in this, what would be column 5. And if you wanted to, you could go back into SQ5 and you could add the column aliases. So this is going to be 12.4. And I'm looking here so they don't ask us to save as anything. So we had 12.2. This other one was, we're going to say that one was 12.3. And here we're going to save this as 12.4. Okay. Now there's an important thing in the middle of page 447 that the authors tell you. It's this: summarized data cannot be mixed with non-summarized data in the same select statement. Okay. And they'll give you error messages, and they give you a whole list of that, a whole set of verbiage there in 445, 447, 448 about the issue. And this is a common problem people run into, especially when they work with pivot tables in Excel, or they try to use the crosstabs function in Access. I hate the crosstabs function in Excel, and pardon me, in Access. I hate it. This is just my own opinion. I think it's clumsy and hard to work with. I say take the tables, if you've got the room in Excel, dump them into Excel and do a pivot table. It's a lot easier to do that. But regardless, you have summarized and non-summarized data, and you cannot mix those two. And they talk about that process, and 12.5 there, okay, it gives you an error statement. I'm going to pop this up and I'm show what we're talking about, okay? This is, we're going to select the manager ID, first name, last name, so far so good, the maximum credit limit from employees table. We're going to group up manager ID, and we're going to order it by manager ID. Now, we're going to get an error message, okay? And the reason is this: the first name and the last name can't be summarized, okay? Unless you're going to count the number of first names that are there, or get a count of the number of last names, they're what we would call categorical data. They're data that, you know, that can't be, they're non-summarized data, so you can't mix the two of them. Now, we'll run the code just so you can see, believe me. Or you take of course, we'll click create. Do query design. We'll close this off. And here we get invalid statement, expected delete, insert procedure, select, okay. And I'll go okay here, and I put in the S. Your query design is specify first name as part of an aggregate function. See, first name, okay. Now, and there in page 450, they show you the exact error and give you the verbiage about that. So they give you a series of solutions to this kind of issue. Okay, and so we're gonna kill that one off. So we'll just close that. We're not gonna save it. No, and you're gonna see those at 12.6. is one, and we do the group by clause, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to select, and this is the bottom page. I'll just pop it up here so you can see it. It's also on page 451. We're going to get the manager ID, the first name and last name, maximum credit limit. So far, so good for the employees table. Okay, no big deal. We're going to group by manager ID, first name, last name, and then order by the manager ID. Now, because we're grouping those, okay, we don't have a problem. All right, we add more columns because we're able to do add the additional columns for the grouping summarization or the aggregation because we add those additional columns. Okay, and they show that at the bottom page 451, 12.6, they show the beginning table on page 452, and 452 in the middle they show the result table, and we'll run that. This is a very common people run into, so you have to group these and then order them. And it's because we're working with two different, the type of data we're working with, first name, is not aggregate. It's not a number. Now, if we want to count it, then what we do is, let's say let's count first name, okay? And we have that in a query. We're going to count the number of times a first name shows up. Okay, and then we're treating it like a number of sorts because it's what we would call nominal or categorical data. Okay, makes sense? And we'll run the query, and there we are, and they show us that very third line. Then we show the last name, and then that third line would be the maximum credit limit, and that's how we get that result table. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and save this as 12.6. Now, through the remainder of the chapter, in page, like at page 453, they show us to divide the query into two separate select statements. Okay, and they show us that on, and so they have us do two different statements. And on page 453, they show the first query, okay, and we get that summarized data, okay. Then we run a second query, okay, and that's how we get the result table that we want. Now we're going to do these two. This is 12.7. And the employees table. I'm going to give you the summarized data. This is at the bottom of page 453, the beginning and the end table. So we'll pull up 12.7, statement 1 for summarized data. And they show us how to do that. Then we'll see the detailed data. Now, to really see this or understand it, you're going to have your text open and look at this, just like you would if you were in class, because you are in class, basically. I'm going to run this. Now, here are the summarized data. This is the manager ID. Now, I'm going to go back into this query, max credit limit, and I'm going to put it as, and I'm going to add a bracket, max credit limit. And this is a workaround I did to get that expression out of there. Ain't that pretty? Let me show you something what I did here in just a minute. And this is, we're going to call this 12.7 summarize. So I'm going to say this is 1.2.7 summarized. Okay. I'll show you real quickly what I did here. So I'm going to take it back down to the design view. If you take a look at the textbook at page 453, you're going to see they have maximum credit. They use the maximum function and then on the credit limit table. I went ahead and created an alias. And here's what I did is I took the safest route to do that. I put as and then a bracket. Then I named that, then I gave the alias for the column and I closed the bracket. That's the easiest, simplest way to do it. And then of course, that's the summarized data, okay? Now we're gonna run another query, and as the authors say, this will give us the detailed data. So here we've got summaries, the number, the maximum credit limit for each of those groups of the manager ID, employees who have the manager ID, that's their maximum credit limit. In fact, let's go back in here for a minute. I want to show you something. Now I'm going to go ahead and that's manager ID as, and I'm going to put bracket ID of employee manager. Close the bracket so that that's clear about what I've got here. As I'm getting a little bit of a glitch here. Oh, here's what I did, folks. I'm so sorry. I didn't put a comma there. It said stop, do not click. There we go. and there's that column alias. So we applied both column aliases to make them more intelligible. So we've got that done. Now the 12.7 detail is very simple. If you look at the top of page 454, I'll just show you right here. This is the detail one. In this case, in this one, we aren't summarizing data. We're just listing them, and we're going to select the manager ID. That's simple enough. First name, last name for the employees table. We're going to order my manager ID. Boom, and there you go. And you can see the results set in 454. So in this case, we just got detailed data. Okay. As we move on over into chapter 12, we move into some fun kinds of stuff where we start to create a report with subtotals and a grand total. And as I mentioned there, as the author mentions there in the textbook, this page 455, Oracle has some special tools that you can use. Access is a little bit different critter, okay? And as I mentioned, the usual way to get this all done is for SQL to work with another level of reporting, and kind of a back data server kind of function where I have data over here, I have the tables, I run a query, then I dump it in and do the work. If you look over on page 446, they're going to have us where we count to 0, and that is we count to 0. Anytime we get a count of something, the computer takes it back to 0, and then it begins to count, because if it didn't do that, the count would be inaccurate. You know, if you've got 3 cars, you know, red, white, and blue car, you don't go, okay, well, here's car 2, that's the red one, car 3 is the white one, and car 4 is the blue one. You don't do that. You go, you assume in your counting, you start with 0. There's 0 cars, then that red one so you have a red one here, that's car number 1. Then you have a red car, you have a white car is car number 2, blue car number 3. So red, white, blue. Isn't that patriotic? See how I integrated that right into this lesson. Fantastic, isn't it? I amaze myself. Well, that's 12.9, and you'll see here. And notice we're going to count the lunch ID as the number of lunches. So we're using a column alias. All right. And that's the beginning table there at the bottom, page 456. And the result table is the number of lunches by employee ID. Okay, so we did that grouping there. And we'll go ahead and pop it in and run it. No big deal there. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and click on create, query design, close, SQL, boom, run, little buddy, there it is. So we're all done there. And that, my friends, is query. That's going to be 12.9. Now, this is counting to 0, part 2. Okay. This is query 12.9. Now, notice as they say there are no rows for 206 or 209 for employees 206 to 9 because they don't have any lunches. If you don't believe me, go over there and take a look at the employee ID 206. Employee 209, and they are nowhere to be found. So they haven't done a lunch. Finally, at 12.10, and this one is a little more complex, not terribly so, but okay. Let me show you what we're going to do here. And they give us the beginning table and the ending table on pages 458 and 459 in the textbook. We're going to select the employee ID. That makes sense, first name, last name. And then we're going to count the lunch ID as the number of lunches, okay? So we're going to use the lunch ID, okay, and we're going to count it from section 1210, that table. Then we're going to group it by employee ID, by first name, by last name, and then we're going to order it by employee ID. So we'll copy that. Okay, and we'll click, we'll do the usual bit. We're going to create the query. And we'll run it. And here it is, the employee's ID, their first name, the last name, and the number of lunches. I'll scrunch that out so you can see it. Of course, this is going to be saved as 1210. Okay. Now look what's going on here. The beginning table had all of those employees with all of their lunches, okay? And the date that each employee, for each time they had a lunch. And if you look there on page 458, the bottom of it, you're going to see in section 1210 table, Susan Brown had lunch 3 times. Voila! Here we have the number of lunches in 1210. So we summarize those data. Okay. Now in page 460, they simply add this in where we use the having clause. So we're just, as I mentioned before, as you've seen this throughout the course, we just simply build progressively. And here this time we're going to be doing some ordering and grouping. And the SQL, boom, boom. And we'll run that puppy. And there's the supplier ID, the product code, and the total servings. And that's the result set at the bottom of page 461. Let's take a gander at this for a minute and see what happened. Here we see we selected the supplier ID, product code, and then we sum. This is an aggregate function, sum the quantity as total servings, okay, from the lunch items table. Then we grouped it by supplier ID and product code, and we used the having clause, having a sum quantity equal to or greater than 10. And then we ordered it by supplier ID and product code. So here we really did some summarizing and grouping, and we used the having clause to filter out everybody who had less than 10 servings. In orders in which servings were ordered. Now, page 462 in the textbook goes through a lot of in fact, and we're going to save this query, it's 1211. Now, the textbook at page 440, 62, 463, 460, 462, 463 talks about the having clause versus the where clause and the differences between them. And I'm not going to go into a long explication about that. It talks about what they both do and the differences between them. And I would leave it to you to take a look at them. There in the middle of 463, I mean, they're both conditional statements. I'll leave it to you to read that. I don't think it's necessary for me to sit here and read it, and it's pretty easy to understand. Now, at the bottom of page 463, the authors pretty much conclude with saying that the having clause, this is what they say, does not add any more power to the select statement. And it really doesn't for all intents and purposes. Where is just about as good. The issue you run into is when you have some null conditions. And I think we're probably at a good stopping point for this part, and this would be part 1 of chapter 12. And I think I want to do that because we're going to do a little bit more complex process in the second part of chapter 12, and this will be the last of it, where we're going to do summarize. Let's just go. I think we can probably finish this. If not, let me say this. Let's go down here, and this is we're going to create a view. Now this is going to be and we're going to create this view. I think we can probably finish chapter 12 out right here, just in a few minutes. We're going to select the supplier ID. This is over on page 464, and the product code, and we're going to sum the quantity, okay, as total savings. So we're going to take the quantity in there and use the sum function, the aggregate function, and we're going to use a column alias called total savings. We're going to get that from the lunch items table, and then we're going to group it by supplier ID and supplier code, okay? And we're going to run that. Now we're going to save this, and this is in the textbook. They tell us to save it as SEC section 1214 underscore view, okay? Make sure you do that at section 1214 underscore view. We'll save it as that because we're going to run another query on that here. And then we're going to come to the second step here. Notice what we're doing is we're creating views and then running queries on those. That's the value of a view, is that we don't have to keep, as I mentioned before, a view and a query. The power of this is I save the code. I don't have to save all the data. The data stays the same. The code just invokes a view, a picture, an answer to a question, which is a query is a question. So we're going to Control C. This is that second step they talked about there at the end of chapter 12. And we'll run it. And that gives us the results set, which is over on page 465. Where we get the supplier ID, the product code, and the total servings. Okay? And at the top of port 465, they show us that view that we created. So we're going to save this, and they don't tell us to save it as anything particular. So we're going to save this as uh, 12-14. Okay. And there's your result set. Now, the remainder of chapter 12 is pretty simple stuff, and I'm going to leave it to you to look at it because I'm just going to take the time to explain it very briefly. If you take a look at 1215 here, using a having clause, this is using a in 1215 they say, okay, using a where clause to eliminate raw data. Okay, now At page 466, they show you this, and here's what's going on. We're going to select the manager ID. We're going to count the number of manager IDs from the employees table. We're going to group it by manager ID, having a manager ID between 201 and 203. So we're going to get everybody who's between 201 and 203. Now, the authors tell us there at the bottom of page 466 that we get the same result more efficiently by using a where clause. And as they show you on 467, both give you the same result. This is important in the sense of the where clause, as they talked about. You can use it to eliminate raw data to filter through them. And they tell you in theory it doesn't matter. When they're in the middle of 466, they say the optimizer is responsible for determining the most efficient way to retain the result. That's software inside the database that makes the decision on where do I search first, or do I grab everything I need and then eliminate everything, or do I eliminate everything and do I then grab what I need? And that depends on the number of records. And so this is why the computer science students take data structures courses to parse through this type of stuff. The remainder of chapter 12, they're in 466. They have you create a view using one column function. Okay, and then that's pretty much it to get a maximum total. And that's pretty self-explanatory. That, of course, is at the end of chapter 12. And you can see is do a series of steps. Frankly, if you're doing more, look, and I'm going to close this this text file off because we're pretty much done. So what you'll want to do this now, you want to save your database if you've been working along, which I hope you will have been, or I will save this for you as well. Hopefully you've all watched this, but you know, the bottom line is the bottom line is this, and I'll know if you popped in or not and saw the video. I'll be able to track that, so I'll know who did or did not. On these summarizing and these aggregations and so forth, this is why you could see that some of the having to run a view, do step 1, step 2, all this business. And I'm going to close this access file off. I'll save the changes, yeah. And then I'm going to stop sharing my desktop. And there I am back again. I'll go to full screen. Now, again, let me say this. A database is intended to be a database. A spreadsheet tool is designed to be a spreadsheet tool. And of course, we have these things now called convergence tools that are out there that people use, okay? And the bottom line is if you have a lot of heavy computational lifting to do, then you're a lot better off, frankly, to use Excel, snatch the data from the table, and then do the work you want, say in pivot table. I don't care. I just want you to kind of understand what's happening in the database. That's why we have it called this data administration. This is not a class about using Access per se. This is a class about how do I get and acquire and more effectively manage data in a warehouse approach using the analytical cube, okay, as a means to conceive of how I get a richer and more holistic picture of transactions, customers and their characteristics, those things that we talked about early on in the course, where we talked about the dimensions and the attributes, when we talked about, and then fact tables, we talked about creating this warehouse, okay, where we have some tables that have dimensions, like the states of the union or the names of the companies. Then those tables that have tables of constants, like we've seen in here with 0 to 99, or tables that have pricing in them, for example, prices. And then we see the fact tables, and those are tables that are collections of records, okay? And a record is a series of columns put together, held together by a unique identifier, usually a primary key, which should be the primary key that allows us then to relate the tables to each other. Okay, got it? Well, that's pretty much it in terms of Chapter 12. I appreciate your time. And this will do it for this. Again, I'll upload this file today over in Moodle. And this is what you'll want to turn in. But I do hope you took the time to see these and to help me out. Thanks a lot, everybody, and have a good one. God bless.